Okay. So hello everyone. Today's lecture is about drug therapy of cough. So as you all know, one of the most common complaint that brings the patient to doctor is that of cough. Okay. There are a lot many causes of cough, but cough is to be treated as a symptom. Okay, so today we will be discussing the drugs and the management part about treating cough as a symptom. So not only we need to discover that what is the etiology of the cough, but we also need to symptomatically treat cough so that the patient is relieved of his or her symptoms. So, with this background, we begin with initially. So, today we will learn about introduction and definition of cough. So, what is cough? And something related to background about cough. Then the classification of drugs that are used for the treatment of cough, which includes the demulcents, expectorants, mucolytics, and antitussives. And finally, some slides are dedicated to the pharmacotherapy of cough. That is, what principles will we use in the treatment of cough. So first, introduction and definition. So, as you all know, as you have studied in your physiology, that cough is a protective reflex which helps to remove the respiratory secretions and foreign particles which are lodged in the respiratory tract so that the respiratory tract remains clear for the passage of air and it does not cause any kind of obstruction for the passage of air throughout the respiratory tract. It occurs mainly due to stimulation of mechanoceptors, chemoceptors, and stretch receptors which are present only in the lung. So, cough is of two types, okay? Dry cough or non productive cough, and productive cough. Dry cough means that even after maximum effort, little or no expectoration or sputum comes out of the respiratory tract into the throat or into the oral cavity. While in productive cough, with effort of cough, we individual produces expectoration in the form of sputum, which can be expectorated out and spitted out from the oral cavity. So basically, cough is of two types: dry or non-productive and productive. Now, why is this classification important? Because the drugs that are used to treat both coughs are of different kinds. Okay, so both the coughs require different types of treatment. Productive cough is helpful in draining the airways and thus it should not be suppressed. So whenever the patient is expectorating out, it is the patient is producing sputum. Okay, we should not suppress that cough. Okay, because it may lead to accumulation of the secretions and all of the fluids in the respiratory airways can lead to infection of the airways as well as lungs. So, productive cough uh, it should not be suppressed, but it should be helped in such a way that the patient can expectorate the sputums easily. Okay. Then only when the amount of expectoration is little, that is in case of dry cough, when the effort is too large and the resulting expectorant, resulting sputum which is expectorated out is very little, then and then it is advisable to suppress cough. Okay. So also in certain situations, say for example, hernia surgery, myocardial infarction, or ocular surgery, where expectoration can give rise to problems with associated conditions. Okay, the conditions which I already spoke. So in those cases, we may need to suppress cough, even if it is productive type of cough. So for special circumstances, we may need to suppress cough, but otherwise only dry cough, which is tiring the patient, which is causing a lot of other problems, needs to be suppressed, while the productive cough does not need to be suppressed. Okay. So, as in the beginning, I have already told you that there is a varied etiology of cough, but cough can be treated as a symptom as well. So, we need to find out the cause of cough, try to remove that cause, and along with that, to provide symptomatic relief to the patient, cough can be treated as a symptom as well. So classification of drugs that are used for the treatment of cough, it includes pharyngeal demulcents, which includes lozenges, glycerin, syrups, licorice. Then you have expectorants, like those drugs which enhance the secretion, like potassium citrate, potassium iodide, guaifenesin, ammonium citrate, ammonium chloride, etc. And mucolytics, that is bromhexin, ambroxol, acetylcysteine, carbocysteine. Then you have the last group, that is antitussives, that is cough center suppressants, those drugs that suppress the cough. It includes opioids like morphine, codeine, ethylmorphine, and non-opioids like noscapine, dextromethorphan, clofedienol, antihistaminics like chlorpheniramine, diphenhydramine, promethazine, etc. And finally, certain drugs that are used as adjuvant to antitussives, they include bronchodilators like salbutamol, terbutaline. More about bronchodilators we will study um, in the lecture where we take up bronchial asthma. But here we just mentioned that these are used as an adjuvant drugs. So first we'll take up pharyngeal demulcents. The mechanism of pharyngeal demulcents is they soothe the throat, they decrease the afferent impulses which arise from the inflamed or irritated pharyngeal mucosa, and thus are helpful in dry cough. So, majority of us have experienced this, that whenever we are suffering from sore throat, okay, our throat gets irritated, we experience a bout of cough, okay, a dry cough. We do not, it does not give rise to expectoration, but only cough that hampers our activities, and it is troublesome. So, in that case, you must have seen a lot of advertisements of this compound, that is Strepsils or Halls or Vicks. So, all these things, they are nothing but what they do is they smooth or they soothe the inflamed posterior pharyngeal mucosa in cases of upper respiratory tract infections, and by coating the posterior pharyngeal wall, they decrease the amount of impulses that arise from these mucosa, resulting in cough. So that is the only use of pharyngeal demulcents. They are very very effective. Okay, they do not they are available in lot of different flavors and tastes, and majority of them, they do not cause any kind of side effects. Next is the secretion enhancers, also known as expectorants. That is, these drugs, what they do is they enhance the respiratory secretion by irritating the respiratory passages. And once the increased secretions, they stretch the mechanoceptor, chemoreceptors, and stretch receptors. The coughing is associated with increased clearance of all other things which are present in the respiratory passage. So the mechanism is these drugs increase bronchial secretion or reduce its viscosity, and thus facilitate its removal from the respiratory tract by coughing. The sodium and potassium citrate, what they do is they increase the bronchial secretion by its salt action, by osmotic action. Okay. Then potassium iodide, again it is an irritant as well as it has some salt action. So both the things are there. It increases secretion by bronchial glands. Then it can also irritate the airway. Prolonged use can lead to thyroid function. It can affect the thyroid function because of the presence of iodide in the compound. Guaifenesin, Vazaka, etc. These are alkaloids, and these are obtained from plant sources. Many of these are used in our Indian system, that is Ayurvedic system of medicine. Again, they have the same role as sodium potassium citrate or potassium iodide, that is, they enhance bronchial secretion and they increase the mucociliary function. Okay, so that the respiratory passage gets cleared of the secretions. Ammonium chloride, again, it is an irritant, it reflexly increases secretions. So this is about the secretion enhancers. Next is the variety of expectorant formulations contain various combinations of above mentioned drugs, and these are available in the market. So a lot of combinations, that is fixed dose combination drugs, are available as syrups which contain expectorants, which contain antitussives, which contain decongestants, which decongest the nasal mucosa. All these are formulated together as one product and they are marketed, and many of such cough syrups are available in the market. So the more about this, whether they are rational or whether they are irrational, that would be taken up in the practical aspect of the practical that covers the respiratory system. But as of now, you remember that a lot of these compounds are combined with a different group of drugs and formulated into single syrup or liquid, and they are marketed as treatment of cough. The some of the examples which I can give you is Tuscu, then Glycodin. So all these are cough syrups, and they are freely available in the market, and many of them are sold as over-the-counter products. Okay. The evidence of effectiveness of expectorant is inconclusive. That is, whether they affect or whether they treat the cough, there is very little evidence regarding this. But still, a lot of these the compounds, they are used in different formulations. Instead of using these secretion enhancers, it is better to use steam inhalation and maintain proper hydration. Okay, so medicated steam or plain steam inhalation is the best way to treat the upper respiratory tract infections as well as lower respiratory tract infections, while maintaining proper hydration, that is drinking plenty of fluids during infection. What it ensures is that the respiratory secretions, they are not dried up, the moisturized, the respiratory tract remains humidified because of hydration, proper hydration, and thus it does not allow the respiratory secretions to dry up. So these are the two better strategies for treating expectorate or productive cough rather than using the drugs which I mentioned in the previous slide. Next group of drug is mucolytics. Again, they are mainly used for productive cough. What they do is they break down the viscous and thick mucus into in thick secretion into less viscid and more fluid secretion so that they can be easily expectorated out. So that is the aim of mucolytic. Again, the name itself is suggestive. Muco means mucus, lytic means they break down the thick viscid mucus into thin liquefied forms. The drugs that are used as mucolytics include bromhexine. Bromhexine, again, it is a derivative of alkaloid vaccine, and it is a mucolytic as well as mucokinetic. That is, it increases, not only it breaks down the thick sputum, but also facilitates it removal from the respiratory tract. It induces copious bronchial secretion and depolymerizes the mucopolysaccharides present in the sputum, particularly useful when mucus plugs are present. Adverse effects include rhinorrhea, lacrimation, nausea, gastric irritation, and hypersensitivity reactions. Bromhexine is available as tablet form as well as syrup formulation. Both the formulations are available. So, depending upon the acceptability of the patient and the age of the patient, can be used. Any of the formulation can be used. Next is ambroxol. Ambroxol is a metabolite of bromhexine, so it has similar properties, similar mechanism of action as well as side effects like bromhexine. Next is acetylcysteine. It opens the disulfide bonds which are present in mucoproteins of sputum and makes it less viscid. It can be given orally as well as it is available as a solution marketed as brand name Mucomist. Now this Mucomist is available as a liquid solution which can be used for nebulizing the patient. Okay, so it can be used as a nebulized solution can be given by inhalational route. So that is one advantage of acetylcysteine over the other mucolytic drugs. The particularly helpful in patients who are intubated. Okay, what happens in intubated patient is uh, their secretions may dry up easily. The mucus then becomes thick and it may form plugs which obstruct the bronchioles, the small tubes which carry air, often causing obstruction to the passage of air, and thus to clear the respiratory passage it is particularly helpful to give once or twice daily acetylcysteine as nebulized solution so that it breaks down these thick mucus plugs and facilitates its removal from the respiratory tract. Breaks the gastric mucus barrier because of its ability to break down the mucopolysaccharides. So it may break the gastric mucus barrier, hence it is contraindicated in peptic ulcer. Next drug is carbocysteine. Again, it is same as acetylcysteine. The only here is carboxy moiety is present instead of the acetyl moiety. It can be given orally. No nebulized solution is available. Some patients of chronic bronchitis, they have been shown to benefit from carbocysteine. It may break the gastric mucus barrier and just like acetylcysteine, it is contraindicated in peptic ulcer. Side effects mainly GI upset and rashes. Next, where do we use mucolytics? So mucolytics are useful in productive cough. So this is the usefulness of mucolytics. Specifically used in patients with thick tenacious sputum or mucus plug like in tracheostomy patients or patients who are intubated, asthmatic bronchitis, cystic fibrosis, etc. All these conditions, the patients suffer from mucus plugs, thick tenacious sputum. So mucolytics are very, very effective in this particular group of patients. The last group of drug is antitussives. Now remember, antitussive means those drugs that suppress the cough center located in the brain. Okay, so these are to be used only for suppressing cough. That is, they are effective in dry cough. Okay, so dry cough variety is treated using antitussives. These are the drugs that act in the CNS to raise the threshold for cough center. Also, it can act peripherally in the respiratory tract and reduce the tussle impulses or sometimes both. Because they aim to suppress cough, antitussives should be used only for dry cough or if the cough is tiring or hazardous. Okay. So some conditions where cough may be hazardous, like abdominal surgery patients, like hernia patients, like myocardial infarction patients, or patients who have undergone eye surgery. In those patients, cough can be a problem. So here, even if it is productive for these patients, it may be necessary to suppress the cough using antitussive agents. The first one is opioids. Morphine and its congeners like codeine, folcodeine, etc. They are the most effective antitussive. Why? Because morphine directly suppresses the cough center located in the brain. Okay, that's why morphine and its analogs, they are very effective antitussive agents. The only limitation of morphine is that it is addicting in nature. Okay, its addictive property is the limitation for using morphine as an antitussive agent. So we do not use morphine. Instead of morphine, we use codeine. Opium alkaloid, similar to but less potent than morphine as an analgesic, but it is equally effective as an antitussive agent. It depresses the cough center and thus inhibits cough. Single dose suppresses cough for about 6 hours. Antitussive effect is blocked by naloxone, which is a mu receptor antagonist. So we can confirm that the antitussive effect of opioids, that is morphine, codeine, etc., is mainly mediated through mu receptors located on the cough center. Adverse effects of codeine include sedation, constipation, abuse liability, and addictive nature. This problem is little less as compared to morphine, but it is still present, and higher doses, if taken in large dose, can lead to respiratory depression. So these are the adverse effects of codeine. Because of these adverse effects, certain compounds like ethyl morphine, which do not cross this blood-brain barrier, have been developed. It's closely related to codeine. It has antitussive properties, but its constipating action is less. Okay. Again, this can cross the blood-brain barrier. Yes. Non-opioids like noscapine, opium alkaloid, which depresses cough but has no narcotic effect. So this is the major difference between the noscapine and morphine. It has no narcotic effects. So it does not have analgesic, does not have dependence causing problems. Okay, but it has similar antitussive effect to codeine. Headache and nausea are its side effects. Yes, the most important drug in this antitussive is dextromethorphan. Okay, it is a synthetic centrally acting NMDA receptor antagonist. Okay, N-methyl D-aspartate receptor antagonist. It suppresses cough, and it has two. It is a mixture of two isomers. One is the D isomer, and second one is the L isomer. But the D isomer or the dextroisomer is the antitussive action, while levoisomer has anti-analgesic. It has analgesic action. It suppresses pain. It's non-addicting, non-constipating as its side effect. Adverse effects include mainly dizziness, nausea, drowsiness, and high doses can cause hallucination. It is very, very little addiction causing properties. Clofedienol, it's again a centrally acting antitussive with antihistaminic and anticholinergic properties as well as some local anesthetic effects. Side effects, because of its anticholinergic and antihistaminic side effects, it can lead to dry mouth, vertigo, and irritability. Antihistaminics, many H1 antihistaminics, because of their um, anticholinergic effect, because of the decreasing the secretion of respiration, has some antitussive effects. They mainly act by their sedative and anticholinergic effect, but they have no effect on direct. There is no direct effect on cough center. It's mainly used for cough in respiratory and allergic states. Bronchodilators, bronchospasm can induce or aggravate cough. So that is why the patient with bronchial asthma, where bronchospasm is a major component of patient's problem, there is associated cough, there is associated increased mucus production, and all these things can lead to cough. So stimulation of pulmonary receptors can lead to cough as well as bronchospasm, particularly in patients with bronchial hyperreactivity. So bronchodilators, they relieve cough in such situations by dilating the bronchioles and thus improving the effectiveness of clearance of secretions by coughing. So that is the role of bronchodilators. More about bronchodilators in the lecture where we discuss bronchial asthma. The fixed dose combination of bronchodilators with antitussive, with expectorants, it's not very effective, but still a lot of them are available in the market. Okay, they are irrational. Now, the rationality and irrationality of it will be discussed in the practical or containing this respiratory system. So finally, I told you at the end of the lecture there will be some slides dedicated to the drug therapy of cough. The first and foremost thing is to find the etiology of cough. Whenever you are treating cough, you have to find out what is the cause of cough. Whether it's an infection like tuberculosis, whether it is acute cough, say for example 1 to 2 days or 3 days or less than 4 to 5 days, then it could be an acute viral respiratory infection. It could be pneumonia, or cough could be broad in the sense that it could be associated with connective tissue disorders like sarcoidosis, or it could be drug induced. So there are a lot many etiologies, that can lead to cough. So the first and foremost thing to do before starting cough therapy is to find out what is the etiology of cough. Following which, always try to remove the cause. Always try to remove the etiology which is causing cough. During this period, symptomatic treatment along with the treating etiology of cough should be given. So certain specific treatment approaches in certain specific conditions for treating cough. So etiology we have like all these things are there, and one by one we will see the approach. URTI, that is upper respiratory tract infection or lower respiratory tract infection, you need to give proper antimicrobial agents, and along with that, if the cough is dry cough, say as is seen in post viral infections, we can use symptomatically treat by using antitussive agents. Then the next condition is smoking, chronic bronchitis or bronchiectasis. We use um, first thing is advise the patient to stop smoking, avoidance of pollutants which are aggravating the symptoms of bronchitis and bronchiectasis, and use bronchodilators as well as steam inhalants to give relief to the patient. Pulmonary TB, yes, the cough is the one of the most common symptoms which present the patient to the physician, and it is treated by giving anti-tubercular drugs. Asthmatic cough, okay, this we will see more in treatment of bronchial asthma, but usually bronchodilators and inhaled corticosteroids, that is the treatment of asthma, will cure the cough. Cough in pulmonary eosinophilia, we use antihelminthics like diethyl carbamazine and inhaled corticosteroids which suppress the inflammation present in eosinophilia. Postnasal drip in sinusitis. So correct the sinusitis using proper antimicrobial agents. Postnasal drip in allergic rhinitis. Use anti-allergic drugs like antihistaminics and inhaled corticosteroids. GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux disease. Use proton pump inhibitors and other acid suppressants to decrease the secretion of gastric acid. ACE inhibitors induce cough. So remove ACE inhibitors and switch over to angiotensin receptor blockers like losartan, etc. And finally, post-viral cough, where we give no specific treatment, but sometimes we can use antitussive agents. So to summarize, cough is a protective reflex. It has varied etiology and is mainly treated as a symptom. Cough is of two types: dry or non-productive and productive cough. And various drugs are available for the treatment of cough, which includes demulcents, expectorants, mucolytics, and antitussives. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.